Have you ever paused and wondered about the gods the Bible calls false? Not just the names Molech, Baal, Chemosh, or Asherah, but the beings behind them. Were they lifeless statues, harmless myths of a forgotten time, or something far more dangerous, ancient, and real? The Bible doesn't mention them casually. These were not idle stories told to frighten children. These were powers that seduced kings, demanded blood, orchestrated entire nations into darkness. Leviticus warns sharply, "You shall not give your children to Molech." And yet, over and over, they did. Why? What force could bend the hearts of covenant people to spill innocent blood before fire and stone? And if these gods were merely idols, why do their names echo persistently from Genesis to Revelation, as if curses refusing to die? Early believers feared even speaking them aloud. Some scrolls hint at origins, while others conceal truths in riddles. Today, we pierce the veil, because behind every false god lies a story of rebellion, seduction, and a war in the unseen realm. Our journey begins in the Valley of Hinnom, where fire once screamed the names of gods no one dared to worship, yet somehow did. They called it Tophet, the place of burning, nestled in the Valley of Hinnom, just outside Jerusalem's southern walls. Scripture does not flinch. Leviticus 18:21 commands, "You shall not give any of your children to offer them to Molech." People did, again and again. By Jeremiah's time, it had become a plague on the nation's soul. High places of Baal filled the valley. The prophet laments, "They offer their sons and daughters to Molech, though I did not command them, nor did it enter my mind." Pause and consider that. God himself says, "It did not enter my mind." What horror could elicit such words? Who was Molech that even covenant-bound Israel would fall to his altar? Was he merely bronze, arms outstretched, or something far worse, something unseen behind the flames, whispering into the minds of kings and priests? Archaeology uncovers Carthaginian Tophets, urns containing charred remains of infants. Stone inscriptions describe offerings to Baal, linked to Molech. In Israel, rituals are omitted from official memory. Molech's rites are not detailed in law. The text recoils. To name it is to admit it happened, and scribes turned their faces from the fire for generations. You were raised on Abraham and Isaac, David and Goliath. But how often were you told that some of God's people stood in line to burn their sons alive? What spirit held such sway that parents surrendered their babies in orchestrated rites, complete with drums, chants, and priestly robes? Ancient commentators like Rashi and Maimonides preserved echoes, placing a child in the metal arms of an idol, heating the statue until it glowed, beating drums to drown screams. This was blood covenant, not abstract idolatry, sacrifice to a power that promised rain, fertility, victory, protection. Psalm 106 hints deeper. They sacrificed their sons and daughters to demons. The Hebrew word is shadim, spiritual beings, dark Elohim. The line between God and demon blurs. Could Molech have been more than lifeless? Could an unseen power older than Babylon crouch behind the bronze, hungering for blood and worship? Israel fell into idolatry, not merely from politics. The fire they lit in Hinnom was a summons, a pact, a spiritual transaction with a real being. Molech's name appears few times, yet his shadow spans centuries. Solomon erected an altar to him, the same king who built the temple. Influence of foreign wives, or deeper seduction, a whispered promise that Molech would protect his dynasty. 2 Kings 23 shows Josiah tearing it down, desecrating Tophet, shattering altars, preventing more children from burning. But how many already had? Today, what gods demand our children, not with fire, but with screens, ideologies, systems devouring innocence in quieter ways? Thrones remain. Only temples change. Devotion, silence, blood, the spirit behind them still asks the same price. Molech was only one. Baal riding the storm, thunder cracking, rain falling, claimed kings' hearts. Asherah, mother goddess, stood beside him, carved into groves and household shrines. Together, they were worshipped as the lifeblood of fertility and power. Not mere idols, perhaps conduits for unseen intelligences, powers masquerading as nature, as blessing. 1 Kings 18. Elijah on Mount Carmel faces 450 prophets of Baal. Terms are clear. God who answers with fire is true. Priests chant, cut themselves, cry out for hours, nothing. Elijah rebuilds the altar, drenched with water. Fire falls from heaven. Triumph. Or a direct strike against entities masquerading as divine. Ugaritic texts show Baal battling Yam and Mo, ruling fertility, reign, kingship. Asherah, consort or mother, queen of heaven, real power. Israel entered land, encountering gods already rooted in soil, hearts, customs. Solomon built high places for Ashtoreth, honoring her. What hold did she have over the wisest king? Not abstract. Perhaps real, dark Elohim. 2 Kings 23. Josiah removes Asher poles from the temple, desecrates sacred space, yet people wept. Why Baal and Asher offered what Yahweh did not: tangible blessings, fertile rituals, manipulable gods. Sacred prostitution, ecstatic rites, child sacrifice. Worship offered illusion of control. Elijah's fire exposed absence, silent power. Yet why did kings build altars in their name? Baal's descent, return, twisted echoes of true story. Could Baal mock Christ? Asher, queen of heaven. Title resurfaces in Jeremiah centuries later. Worship survived. They were not foreign invaders. They were in land, hearts, groves, high places, buried figurines. Prophets confronted reality. Fire not only symbolic. Judgment against rival thrones. Baal and Asher's influence lingered. Seduced through emotional catharsis, ritualized grief. Offering control and chaos, Chemosh demanded blood in Moab. 2 Kings. 3:27 King sacrifices his own heir to a god whose throne he believed real. Spiritual reality, not mere superstition. God's armies feared Chemosh's aftermath. Ancient war equals theology. Kosh, god of Moab, divine patron of vengeance, blood, war. Nergal, Ashima, Adramelech, imported gods in Samaria. Assyrian exile quiet spiritual invasion. False gods infiltrate, adapt, fragment truth to evade detection. Hosea wept, Amos thundered. Remnant remembered. Today, these names may be lost, but the pattern persists. Ideologies, systems, comfort. Tradition false gods of new forms continue. Daniel in Babylon resisted Nebo-Bel. False gods influence. Book of Daniel equals spiritual confrontation between rival pantheons. Babylonians' gods real but powerless before Yahweh. Same applies today. Mammon, Artemis, Zeus, Hermes modern facades. Paul warns, offer sacrifice to demons, not God. 1 Corinthians 10:20. Every empire, every altar, every idol transaction, spiritual war, rebellion. Gospel equals invasion. Jesus casts out demons. Paul rebukes principalities. Early church persecuted not for kindness, but allegiance. Saying Jesus is Lord equals Artemis. Mammon, Hermes must bow. Death for defiance. Inheritance for us. False gods adapt. Temples gone. Worship lives on through desire, power, ideology, screens. Artemis no longer a temple, but worship of beauty, fame, influence. Mammon's statues gone, but obsession with wealth remains. Zeus fallen, but spirit remains in human thrones. Idols evolve, but hunger persists. Revelation exposes ultimate reckoning. War in heaven, Michael fights dragon. Dragon hurled down. A third of stars swept away, fallen Elohim. Thrones cast down. Psalm 82. God holds judgment over gods, sons of Most High. False gods do not vanish quietly. They mutate. Revelation shows cosmic judgment. Every altar, throne, and spiritual authority bows. The Lamb reigns, not with sword, thunder, or fire, but authority, love, life. Every name, Molech to Mammon, Baal to Artemis, faces final defeat. Lamb open scroll. He has already won. From Hinnom's firelit shadows to Babylon's seductions. Mount Carmel's fire, Samaria's exile, Ephesus' cult. The story is a continuous spiritual war. Not myth, not mere culture, but unseen powers demanding worship, deceiving nations, corrupting hearts. But the war has a victor. False gods, fallen thrones, and spiritual parasites bow before the Lamb. His kingdom remains. His truth prevails as we leave the firelit shadows of Hinnom and the storm-swept altars of Baal, Chemosh, and Asherah behind. We step into the world of Revelation, where the battle between the true God and these fallen powers reaches its cosmic crescendo. The ancient gods we traced from Israel to Babylon, from Ephesus to Samaria, are not idle or forgotten. They are waiting, reshaping themselves in every generation, speaking in the language of ambition, desire, and false promises. They have worn countless masks across centuries, yet their hunger remains unchanged. Every altar we have walked past, every ritual we have imagined, points to one truth: spiritual authority, whether named Molech, Baal, Chemosh, Mammon, or Artemis, is real, and it seeks submission. Revelation unveils the full extent of this spiritual reality, lifting the veil that obscured the cosmic war from human eyes. In Revelation 12, the war in heaven is described with symbols that are as terrifying as they are illuminating. Michael and his angels confront the dragon, the ancient adversary who has deceived the nations for millennia. This is no myth, no metaphorical tale of rebellion. The dragon commands legions, swept a third of the stars from the sky. Ancient Elohim. Thrones once assigned by God, now corrupted and fallen.
These are not mere figurines, sculptures, or stories. They are powers with agency, strategy, and hunger. The dragon's fall is violent, dramatic, and decisive. Yet, as the text reminds us, his defeat does not erase his presence entirely. He still deceives, he still influences, and he still whispers to the hearts of men. The false gods we have traced: Baal, Molech, Chemosh, Artemis, Mammon, find their echoes here, under a new guise, in new systems, new cities, new empires. And Revelation is not merely a record of future events. It is a blueprint, a revelation of patterns that stretch across human history. The apocalypse does not unfold in isolation. It is the culmination of every altar, every idol, every false covenant humanity has ever entered. The gods we encountered in Hinnom, in Moab, in Samaria, in Babylon, and in Ephesus, all converge in the vision of John. Here, the spiritual landscape is revealed as a battlefield. Thrones of power, corrupt and seductive, are stacked against the throne of the Lamb. The dragon is ancient, but so is Michael. The cosmic chessboard is set, and the stakes are every human soul. When John sees the dragon hurled down, he is witnessing the cosmic reversal of every power that demanded worship apart from God. Every entity that thrived on manipulation, deception, and bloodshed is brought low. But before the final victory is fully enacted, the forces of darkness continue their subtle, insidious work on earth. This is the warning we must hear. The fall of these powers in the spiritual realm does not immediately remove their influence in the material world, from Molech's fiery altars to Mammon's gilded temples, from Baal's storm worship to Artemis's civic power. The methods evolve, yet the strategy remains consistent: seduction, deception, and demand for loyalty. Today, the false gods walk not on pedestals, but through institutions, technologies, ideologies, and desires. They no longer need temples of marble or human sacrifices in the streets. They operate through wealth, influence, and spiritual subtlety. Screens glow like altars, and our attention becomes the offering. Our time, energy, ambition, and loyalty are traded in invisible exchanges, echoing the same spiritual transactions that once required fire and blood. Revelation reveals that these powers, though defeated, continue to exert influence until the final judgment, reminding us that spiritual vigilance is required at every age. Consider Mammon, named explicitly by Jesus in Matthew 6:24. This is not a metaphor for wealth alone. Mammon is wealth personified, enthroned as a spiritual master, demanding allegiance, promising security, and consuming identity. From ancient Babylonian merchants to modern corporate empires, the influence of Mammon is tangible, pervasive, and spiritually real. People bow before it, not in ritualistic gestures, but in devotion to accumulation, greed, and power. Mammon's temples are now skyscrapers, stock markets, and financial systems that dictate human behavior. Yet the principle remains. Loyalty to any power apart from God is spiritual servitude. Revelation makes clear that the Lamb will ultimately confront this, dismantling the power structures that have enslaved hearts and souls. Until that moment, the world is a field of spiritual conflict, where devotion is continually tested. Then there is Artemis, whose worship once commanded an entire city. Acts 19 recounts the riot in Ephesus when Paul disrupted her cult, revealing the depth of human allegiance to false deities. The power of Artemis was not merely religious. It was civic, economic, and social. This demonstrates the adaptability of false gods. They are not passive. They claim influence in every aspect of life, often through structures that appear neutral or beneficial. Today, the equivalent of Artemis is found in ideologies, cultural forces, and societal pressures that demand conformity, admiration, or devotion, offering fulfillment in place of truth. Revelation reminds us that these powers, though spiritually defeated, continue to tempt, distract, and dominate until their final judgment. The book of Daniel provides another lens. Daniel, in the courts of Babylon, faces Nebo and Baal, gods whose power is real but ultimately subordinate to Yahweh. This narrative shows the continuity of spiritual confrontation across generations. False gods are always present, influencing nations, cultures, and individuals. The prophets, apostles, and faithful witnesses repeatedly reveal that human compliance is never neutral. Allegiance to God demands rejection of these spiritual powers. Every prayer, every act of obedience, every refusal to bow is a confrontation with the invisible forces that once thrived behind altars of bronze and gold. As the narrative of Scripture moves from the Old to the New Testament, the methods of deception evolve, but the strategy remains consistent. False gods shift from wood and stone to systems, ideologies, and influence over human ambition and desire. Their names change, but the hunger remains. The ultimate revelation in Revelation 12-20 shows the cosmic resolution of this long-standing conflict. The dragon, the beast, the false prophet, and the deceived nations are ultimately defeated. Thrones once revered fall, idols are unmasked, and every power that sought to claim allegiance apart from God is rendered impotent before the Lamb. This is the narrative. Arc of spiritual history: deception, seduction, confrontation, and ultimate victory. The biblical record, though often subtle, consistently points to this climactic resolution. Yet, even as Revelation describes the fall of these powers, it is crucial to understand that their influence is not eradicated in the human realm until the final judgment. False gods continue to operate through ambition, desire, ideology, and social systems. The deception persists, often under new guises, adapted to the culture and era. The spiritual war is ongoing. Every empire, every city, every human institution is a potential battleground where allegiance is contested. From Hinnom to Babylon, Ephesus to the modern world. The pattern remains: spiritual authority, rebellion, and human complicity intersect to create arenas where devotion is tested. The Lamb's victory, though assured, calls for human participation in resistance. Faithful living, allegiance to God, and recognition of spiritual deception are acts of confrontation against the unseen powers that still operate. Revelation is not merely prophecy. It is a call to vigilance, discernment, and allegiance. Every false god encountered in Scripture, from Molech demanding blood to Mammon demanding devotion, serves as a lesson in recognizing spiritual authority, resisting deception, and aligning with the true God. The narrative of Revelation validates that the cosmic struggle between God and the rebel powers is mirrored in the human experience, and that our choices in devotion, loyalty, and obedience have eternal significance as we examine the history of these powers. From Hinnom to Babylon, Samaria to Ephesus, we recognize a persistent principle: false gods, in all forms, demand worship, loyalty, and sacrifice. They adapt, evolve, and persist, but they are ultimately defeated by the Lamb. Revelation provides the final chapter in this cosmic narrative, showing that the rebellion of these ancient powers, though real, is temporary. The Lamb, wounded yet victorious, reigns supreme. Thrones fall, names are erased, altars crumble, and every power that claimed dominion apart from God is rendered powerless. This is the ultimate truth that Scripture whispers across the ages. Though the gods were real, they were never stronger than the one true God. Now, the question becomes personal. Where are the altars in our lives? Which names do we silently honor, serve, or obey? False gods today may not be bronze statues, storm deities, or fertility idols. Yet they manifest in ambition, greed, desire, influence, and systems of power. The spiritual pattern remains unchanged. Revelation assures us that these powers will fall, but vigilance is required. Recognizing the presence of false gods, resisting their demands, and aligning with the Lamb is our responsibility. The cosmic battle, though won in heaven, continues on earth through every human heart, from Hinnom to modern cities. The story of false gods is one of rebellion, seduction, and judgment. They are real, their power is tangible, and their influence extends across history. Yet Revelation declares their end. The Lamb reigns. Every throne that claimed allegiance apart from God is cast down. Every power that sought to dominate human hearts is defeated. Scripture confirms this through Psalm 82, Deuteronomy 32, Daniel, and Revelation. The gods fell, the powers were exposed, and the Lamb triumphs. But the warning remains. Their echoes persist. Subtle, deceptive, demanding vigilance, discernment, and allegiance to the true God. So, as we conclude this journey through firelit valleys, storm-worshipping altars, high places of exile, and temples of empire, remember, the gods were real. They demanded devotion, deceived nations, and seduced hearts. But the Lamb has triumphed. Their thrones fall, their names fade, their power ends. And yet, the echoes remain, whispering in systems, desires, and ambitions. This is your call. Examine your life, uncover hidden altars, resist false devotion, and embrace the Lamb who has conquered all. Let it begin now, in your life, in your heart, in your choices. The false gods fall. The Lamb reigns. The victory is complete, eternal, and unshakable.